Scorpio, welcome back, my beautiful souls. I hope you're doing well. As always, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Before we begin, I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your energy, your support, and your beautiful presence in this space. Now, Scorpio, this reading feels intense, not chaotic, not dramatic, just intense. Because the energy coming through is someone who has been fighting their own heart for a very long time. And honestly, I don't think they can do it anymore. The first card that immediately catches my attention is the Judgment card. Okay, this is interesting because I keep getting the feeling that this person has reached a point where they can no longer pretend they don't know the truth. You know when someone spends months, maybe even years, convincing themselves that they've moved on, telling themselves they're fine, telling themselves they're over it, telling themselves that what happened wasn't that important. That's what this feels like. This person tried to bury their feelings under work, under responsibilities, under distractions. Some of them even tried replacing this connection altogether. But every attempt seemed to lead them right back to the same place, right back to you. And as I'm saying that, the Moon card appears. Honestly, this card feels less like mystery and more like avoidance. Because what I'm seeing is someone who spent a very long time hiding from their own emotions, not hiding them from you, hiding them from themselves. That's different. This feels like a person who was terrified of what they felt. Terrified of how deeply this connection affected them. Terrified of what would happen if they actually admitted the truth. Because the moment they admit the truth, everything changes. Their decisions change, their priorities change, their future changes. And I keep hearing this person saying, no, it's over. No, I've moved on. No, I don't think about them anymore. Yet every time they said it, their heart disagreed. Every single time. What's fascinating here is that they genuinely tried. I don't see somebody casually walking away. I see somebody making a real effort to disconnect. Some of them stopped checking your social media. Some of them stopped asking about you. Some of them tried dating other people. Some of them threw themselves into work. Others became incredibly busy. Busy enough that they wouldn't have to sit alone with their thoughts. Because that's where the problem was. Whenever things became quiet, you returned. Not physically, energetically, mentally, emotionally. The Six of Cups card just slid into the reading, and I have to be honest. This card feels like a memory they cannot escape. Not because they're trying to hold on to the past, it's because the connection never truly left them. There are moments they remember that still feel alive. Conversations, looks, certain words, small details, the way you laughed, the way you responded to something, the way you understood them when nobody else seemed to. And what's strange is that some of these memories appear when they're least expecting them. They're driving, thinking about something completely unrelated. Then suddenly, there you are. They're walking through a store, hearing a song, seeing a place, meeting someone who reminds them of you, and for a split second it feels as though no time has passed at all. That's what keeps frustrating them, because they wanted distance to erase the connection. Instead, distance made them realize how much it mattered. Okay, I just got chills, because the Lover's card is now sitting directly beside the Judgment card. And here's what I keep hearing. I thought if I ignored it, it would disappear. That's the energy. This person believed feelings worked like a fire. They thought if they stopped feeding it, eventually it would burn out. But something else happened. The more they tried to suppress it, the stronger it became. Not louder, stronger. There's a difference. Loud emotions come and go. Strong emotions stay. And this connection stayed. Even during the periods when they weren't speaking. Even during the periods when they acted cold. Even during the periods when they convinced everyone around them that they were done. Deep down, they weren't done, not even close. I keep seeing someone sitting alone replaying choices they made. Not because they're obsessed with the past, because they're finally becoming honest with themselves. The excuses aren't working anymore. The distractions aren't working anymore. The avoidance isn't working anymore. The walls they've built around their heart are starting to crack. And the strange thing is, part of them is relieved. Because carrying this denial has been exhausting. It's taken energy, it's taken effort, it's taken constant self-control. And now I'm seeing somebody looking at this connection differently. Not as something they need to escape. Not as something they need to explain away. But as something they need to understand. Something they need to face. Something they need to stop running from. Because the more these could unfold across the table, the clearer it becomes that this story never actually ended for them. What ended was the illusion that they could simply walk away and never look back. And as these cards continue to reveal themselves, I'm starting to see why certain people around this situation may have played a much bigger role than Scorpio ever realized. Because here's what I'm seeing. This wasn't just a situation where two people drifted apart naturally. The energy shifts the second I pull the Seven of Swords card. And honestly, Scorpio, somebody around this connection knew exactly what they were doing. I keep getting this image of conversations happening behind closed doors, comments being made when you weren't present, opinions being offered that nobody asked for, little suggestions, little doubts, little seeds being planted. Nothing obvious enough to be caught immediately, nothing dramatic enough to trigger alarm bells, just enough to influence someone's thinking, just enough to create hesitation. You know, it's interesting because I don't actually feel like your person realized what was happening at first. I think they trusted certain people. I think they believed certain narratives. And for a while, they accepted information without questioning where it came from, because somebody around them was very convincing, very confident, very sure of themselves. The kind of person who always has an opinion. The kind of person who always seems to know what's best for everyone else's life. Yet when I look at the energy surrounding this individual, something feels off. It feels performative, calculated, like they weren't helping because they cared. They were helping because they wanted influence. The Five of Wands card appears, and suddenly everything becomes louder. Competition, comparison, ego, people measuring themselves against one another. Honestly, I don't even think Scorpio knew the extent of it. Because what I'm seeing isn't someone openly declaring war. This feels more like hidden rivalry. Somebody quietly watching, quietly comparing, quietly wondering why your presence carried so much weight, why your name kept coming up, why your energy continued to linger, and the more your person talked about you, the more uncomfortable this individual became. I have to be honest, this feels personal, almost as if somebody felt threatened by what you represented. Not necessarily because of what you did, because of who you are, your confidence, your resilience, your ability to keep moving forward, your ability to survive difficult situations without constantly needing validation from everyone around you. And here's where things get interesting. The Seven of Swords card keeps pulling my attention back, because now I'm seeing your person looking at past conversations differently, replaying them, questioning them, realizing things they missed before. It's almost like hearing an old recording and suddenly noticing a detail that was hidden in plain sight. A comment that seemed innocent, a warning that seemed helpful, an opinion that seemed supportive. Yet now, something about it feels wrong. Something about it doesn't sit right anymore. The Devil card just landed across the spread, and the atmosphere changes immediately. Not because somebody is evil, not because we're dealing with some dramatic movie villain. It feels more subtle than that. Attachment, control, influence, the need to keep someone exactly where they are. Because if your person moved forward, somebody else would lose their position. Somebody else would lose their access. Somebody else would lose their power. And that's what I'm noticing. This individual wasn't interested in what was best for your person. They were interested in maintaining their own comfort, maintaining their own importance, maintaining their own role in the story. You know, sometimes people become accustomed to being needed. They become accustomed to being the person everyone listens to, the person everyone runs to, the person who gets the final say. And when that dynamic begins to change, they panic. That's exactly what this feels like. Panic, because your person started thinking for themselves, started questioning things, started noticing contradictions, started asking questions that made certain people uncomfortable. And the moment that happened, resistance appeared, more opinions, more pressure, more interference. The strange thing is, all of that pressure actually had the opposite effect. Instead of pushing your person away from this connection, it forced them to look closer. It forced them to ask why so many people seemed invested in keeping Scorpio at a distance. Why was everybody so concerned? Why did your name trigger such strong reactions? Why did certain people become defensive every time this connection came up? Those questions started piling up, one after another, until eventually, the Tower card appeared. Okay, this is where everything changes. Because I'm not seeing a gentle realization, I'm seeing a shock, a truth that lands hard, a moment where something finally clicks. Your person sees something they can't unsee, learns something they can't unknow, recognizes a pattern they can no longer ignore. And suddenly the story they've been told starts falling apart. Not all at once, piece by piece, like bricks being removed from a wall. One realization, then another, until the entire structure collapses under its own weight. What's fascinating is that this truth doesn't just expose somebody else's behavior. It also forces your person to confront themselves. The choices they made, the things they overlooked, the moments they stayed silent, the times they gave others more authority over their life than they should have. There's regret here, not because they lacked feelings, because they allowed outside voices to become louder than their own heart. And now, I keep seeing somebody sitting with that realization, quietly, No distractions, no excuses, no one left to blame, just them and the truth. Because once those walls start falling, once those illusions begin breaking apart, there's another question rising to the surface that they can no longer avoid. If all of those people were wrong about Scorpio, what else have they been wrong about? Because once that question enters someone's mind, everything begins to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, not with some grand announcement. It starts quietly. A little less tolerance for things that used to feel normal. A little less patience for people who always seem to create confusion. A little less interest in pretending. And honestly, Scorpio, that's exactly what I'm seeing here. The death card appears and the entire energy of the reading shifts. Not because this person is becoming someone new, because they're finally allowing an old version of themselves to fall away. You know, some people spend years carrying identities that were never really theirs. The responsible one, the agreeable one, the peacekeeper, the person who always does what everyone else expects, the person who never rocks the boat, the person who sacrifices what they want to keep everyone else comfortable. This feels like somebody who has been living under those expectations for a very long time, and they're exhausted, absolutely exhausted, because every compromise they've made has slowly moved them further away from themselves. The strange thing is, I don't think they fully understood that until recently. I think they believed they were being mature, being practical, being logical. Yet every choice that ignored their heart left them feeling emptier than before. The Eight of Cups card slides onto the table, and I immediately see somebody standing at a crossroads. Not physically, emotionally, internally. They're looking at parts of their life that once felt important. Certain friendships, certain obligations, certain dynamics, certain routines. And for the first time, they're asking themselves a question they avoided for years. Why am I still holding on to this? That's what keeps repeating. Why? Why am I still carrying this? Why am I still entertaining this? Why am I still allowing this energy access to me? And once those questions begin, the answers start arriving. Some people no longer feel aligned. Some environments no longer feel healthy. Some relationships no longer feel honest. Some patterns no longer make sense. I have to be honest. This person seems shocked by how much of their life was built around keeping other people comfortable. It's almost like they're waking up inside their own story, looking around, seeing things differently, noticing things differently, feeling things differently. Because once the illusion breaks, it becomes impossible to view life through the same lens. The Hermit card appears, and suddenly everything becomes quieter, less noise, less outside influence, less pressure. This feels like somebody pulling back from the world for a little while. Not because they're depressed, not because they're giving up, because they're thinking, really thinking, maybe for the first time in years. I keep seeing someone spending more time alone, driving alone, walking alone, sitting with their thoughts, not reaching for distractions immediately, not rushing to fill every silence, not asking 10 different people for advice. They're starting to trust themselves again. And honestly, that might be one of the biggest changes happening here. Trust. Trusting their own instincts, trusting their own feelings, trusting their own observations, trusting what they know in their heart instead of what everyone else tells them they should know. Because there is a huge difference. The more time they spend in this energy, the more confident they become. Not louder, not more aggressive, just clearer. And clarity changes everything. The Strength card appears beside the Hermit card, and I love the way these two energies interact. Because what I'm seeing isn't somebody becoming fearless, they're becoming honest. Those are two completely different things. Fear still exists. Doubt still exists. Uncertainty still exists. Yet they keep moving anyway. That's the difference. They are no longer making decisions based entirely on fear. They're no longer asking, what if everything goes wrong? They're starting to ask, what if I've been denying myself something important? You know, that question changes people. Because once somebody begins imagining a different future, the current one becomes harder to accept. And that's exactly what's happening. The future they once settled for no longer feels satisfying. The life they once tolerated no longer feels enough. The people they once prioritized no longer hold the same influence. Something inside them has shifted. The Death card keeps drawing my attention again. Because I don't feel like this transformation is finished. I feel like it's still happening. Every day they're shedding another layer. Every day they're releasing another expectation. Every day they're becoming more willing to disappoint other people if it means being truthful with themselves. That is a massive change for this person, massive, especially if they've spent years seeking approval, especially if they've spent years trying to avoid conflict, especially if they've spent years convincing themselves that their desires should always come second. Not anymore. Something has awakened, something that refuses to go back to sleep. And the fascinating thing is, the more they reconnect with themselves, the more one particular image keeps appearing in their mind. One particular person, one particular future. Because the version of them that was willing to settle is disappearing. And the version emerging from all of this seems to be asking a very different question. Not what will everyone else think? Not how do I keep everyone happy? Not how do I avoid upsetting people? The question becoming louder every day sounds much more like this. If I finally choose the life I truly want, where does Scorpio fit into it? Because the answer that's beginning to emerge is surprising even them. The King of Pentacles card lands first, and immediately I notice something different about this energy. Less uncertainty, less confusion, less emotional chaos. This person isn't sitting around wondering whether they care anymore. That question has already been answered. What they're focused on now is something much more practical. What would it actually take to make this real? That's where their mind keeps going. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking, reality. I keep seeing somebody thinking about logistics, thinking about timing, thinking about responsibilities, thinking about what kind of partner they want to be. Because here's what I'm noticing. The version of this person that existed before was always looking for reasons why something couldn't work. The version I'm seeing now is looking for ways it can. That's a huge difference, a massive difference. Because once somebody begins operating from possibility instead of limitation, their entire outlook changes. And honestly, Scorpio, I don't think this person expected that shift to happen. I don't think they expected you to remain this important. Yet here we are. The Queen of Cups card appears and the atmosphere softens immediately. There's something incredibly tender about this energy. Not dramatic, not obsessive, not overwhelming, just sincere. You know, I keep getting the feeling that one of the things this person admires most about you isn't something obvious. It's not necessarily your appearance. It's not your accomplishments. It's not even something they can easily explain to other people. It's how they feel around you. That's what keeps standing out. There are people we meet who make life louder. Then there are people who somehow make life quieter, safer, more meaningful. And that's how they're viewing Scorpio. Like somebody who brings them back to themselves. Somebody who makes them feel understood without needing a long explanation. Somebody who sees things other people miss. I have to be honest, this person may not have appreciated that fully in the past. Because when something is consistently available, people sometimes underestimate its value, not intentionally. They just do, until it's gone. Until there's distance. Until they realize how rare it actually was. And now they're comparing everything, every interaction, every connection, every relationship, against the feeling they experienced with you. That's becoming impossible to ignore. The King of Pentacles card keeps pulling my attention back. Because this isn't somebody who's interested in temporary experiences anymore. I don't see somebody chasing excitement. I don't see somebody chasing attention. I see somebody craving stability, real stability, the kind that lasts, the kind you build, the kind that requires effort. And every time they imagine that future, Scorpio somehow ends up standing in the picture. Not because they're forcing it, because that's naturally where their thoughts go. The Ten of Pentacles card appears and suddenly the vision becomes even clearer. I keep seeing this person thinking further ahead than they normally do. Months ahead, years ahead, maybe even further. They're looking at their life differently now. Not through the lens of immediate gratification, through the lens of legacy, purpose, longevity. What are they building? Who are they building it with? Who do they trust enough to share that future? Those questions matter more than they used to, because they've reached a point where surface-level connections no longer satisfy them. Small talk doesn't satisfy them. Half-hearted effort doesn't satisfy them. Situationships don't satisfy them. Pretending doesn't satisfy them. They're craving something genuine, something they can invest in, something they can protect, something they can nurture over time. And every time I look at this spread, your energy remains present, very present. The Three of Pentacles card slides into view, and this is where things become interesting. Because now I'm seeing cooperation, partnership, movement. Not one person carrying everything alone, not one person making all the effort. This person keeps imagining what life would feel like if they actually worked together with Scorpio instead of fighting against the connection. What would happen if they stopped resisting? What would happen if they stopped overthinking? What would happen if they simply allowed themselves to move toward what they already know they want? Okay, that's a powerful question, because I don't think they're asking whether they want you anymore. I think they're asking whether they're ready to fully commit to the path that wanting you requires. Those are two very different things. Wanting someone is easy. Building something meaningful requires courage. It requires consistency. It requires showing up. And honestly, I think they're becoming aware of that. This isn't somebody daydreaming anymore. This feels like somebody preparing. Preparing emotionally. Preparing mentally. Preparing for conversations they've avoided. Preparing for decisions they've postponed. Preparing to step into a version of themselves that takes accountability for what they truly desire. Because every card that's appearing here seems to point toward the same realization. They don't want a life that looks good from the outside. They want a life that feels right when nobody else is watching. And somehow, every road they follow keeps leading back to the same destination. The same face, the same energy, the same connection. I keep seeing this person imagining what it would feel like to finally stop holding back, to finally stop pretending they're unaffected, to finally stop acting as though this connection is just another chapter that came and went. Because it isn't. Not to them. Not anymore. A realization is beginning to settle into their heart, and the deeper it settles, the harder it becomes to remain silent. Especially when they're starting to understand that there may be certain things Scorpio still doesn't know, because some truths become impossible to carry in silence forever. The Ace of Cups card appears, and the energy immediately becomes more vulnerable than anything we've seen so far. Not weaker, just honest, painfully honest. I keep seeing somebody reaching a point where hiding their feelings requires more effort than expressing them. And that's saying a lot because this person has spent a long time holding things in, holding back words, holding back emotions, holding back confessions, holding back conversations they replayed 1,000 times in their head but never actually had. You know, there comes a moment when somebody realizes they're not protecting themselves anymore. They're imprisoning themselves. That's what this feels like. Because every unspoken truth creates another wall. Every avoided conversation creates more distance. Every day spent pretending becomes heavier than the day before. And now I'm seeing somebody who's tired. Not tired of Scorpio. Tired of carrying the weight of everything they've never said. The Ace of Cups card keeps pulling my attention back because it feels almost overwhelming to them. Not in a bad way. More like standing in front of something important and realizing there's no way around it. Only through it. I have to be honest, this person seems emotional. Much more emotional than they let people see. I think they've spent a long time presenting a version of themselves that appeared controlled, stable, unaffected. Yet beneath the surface, there has been an entire conversation happening inside their heart. A conversation nobody else could hear. A conversation that always seems to circle back to you. The Knight of Cups card appears, and suddenly I see movement. Actual movement. Not just thinking. Not just imagining. Not just wondering. Movement. Somebody drafting messages and deleting them. Opening conversations and closing them. Picking up the phone and putting it back down. Practicing what they want to say. Changing the words. Starting over. Trying again. Because here's what I'm seeing. This person wants to get it right. They don't want another misunderstanding. They don't want another missed opportunity. They don't want another situation where fear speaks louder than truth. And honestly, that fear is still there. The possibility of rejection. The possibility that too much time has passed. The possibility that Scorpio may not feel the same way. Those fears haven't disappeared, yet something larger is growing. Something stronger. The desire to be authentic. The desire to stop hiding. The desire to finally show up as who they really are. Okay, the Hierophant card just appeared. And this changes the atmosphere completely. Because this person isn't approaching this connection from a casual place anymore. They're looking at it differently now. More seriously. More intentionally. More maturely. I keep seeing somebody asking themselves questions they've never asked before. What kind of life do I actually want? Who do I want standing beside me? Who do I trust? Who do I respect? Who do I see myself building with? Because once somebody begins asking those questions honestly, the answers become difficult to ignore. Especially when the same person keeps appearing every single time. You know, this isn't giving me the energy of somebody chasing a fantasy. This feels like somebody recognizing value, recognizing consistency, recognizing substance. They're beginning to understand that the things they once overlooked may have been the most important things all along. The Four of Wands card lands beside the Hierophant card, and honestly, this is beautiful. Because I don't see this person fantasizing about grand gestures. I see them imagining ordinary moments. Quiet moments, shared moments, simple moments, the kind of moments people rarely talk about. Morning coffee, inside jokes, a safe place to come home to. A feeling of being understood, a feeling of belonging, a feeling that life doesn't have to be a constant battle. That's what keeps standing out. They don't just want excitement, they want peace. And somehow when they think about peace, they think about Scorpio. Not because you're perfect, not because life would magically become easy, because something about this connection feels real. And reality is becoming far more attractive to them than illusion. The judgment card appears again, and I actually smiled when it showed up, because it feels like a full circle moment, not an ending, a realization, a decision, a recognition of something that has been standing in front of them the entire time. I keep hearing this person say, "I know now." Very simple, very direct, not dramatic, not theatrical, just certainty. The kind of certainty that arrives after confusion finally leaves. The kind of certainty that arrives after somebody stops listening to everyone else and starts listening to themselves. And here's the fascinating part. The closer they get to this truth, the less interested they become in protecting their old image. The less interested they become in maintaining appearances. The less interested they become in pleasing people who never truly understood them. Because another realization is beginning to emerge. One that's making their heart beat a little faster every time they think about it. The realization that there may be only one thing left to do, one conversation, one confession. One moment where everything they've kept hidden finally has to be spoken out loud. And the more this person imagines that moment, the more they find themselves wondering what Scorpio's eyes will look like when they finally hear the truth. Scorpio, I'm going to leave the reading here. There's something powerful about the energy coming through today. Not because everything has already happened, but because someone is finally becoming honest with themselves. Sometimes the biggest changes begin long before a single word is spoken. And that's exactly what this feels like. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your trust. I appreciate every single one of you more than you know. Take good care of yourself, Scorpio, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.